insurance agents from around the world. Hey guys, this is Scott Howell with the Insurance Guys Podcast. Hey, let's talk about client experience for just a minute. Guys, we have got to start meeting our clients where they want to be met. Not where you want to be met. Guys, this isn't about you. This is about them. I know we would all love it to be about us, but it's about our clients. We got to start meeting them where they want to be met. I understand some of you want them to come into the office, drink coffee for 45 minutes, whatever. That's just not where we are today, guys. For those people that want that, that's fantastic. Every single year, more and more people want to jump on a mobile app. They want to download their ID cards. They want easy. They want speed. They don't want to come by and drink coffee with you. One of the easiest ways you can do this is through the agency-branded self-service platform, guys, and that is where Glovebox comes in. A carrier-connected, agency-branded tool for your clients. Call today, get a demo with Glovebox, and mention the Insurance Guys Podcast to get 20% off the life of your agency-branded CXP. Guys, let's go meet our clients where they want to be met. Easy, speed. Have a great day.
Hey guys, it's Bradley. Every now and then a company comes across my desk that not only blows my mind in what they're able to accomplish, but we implement that particular technology at Portal and it completely changes the way we do business. That's happened a few times with a few different companies, and it happened this year with Ascend. In case you don't know, Ascend saves agents time by simplifying the time-consuming process of collecting payments, premium finance, and paying the carriers without the back and forth paperwork, and it's integrated right into a slick checkout experience where customers can pay how they want, credit, debit, ACH. Own the customer experience, guys. It's branded to your agency, and they offer a modern checkout experience that your customers want. Ascend will also, and this is a big one for me, automatically pay the provider, the carrier, the MGA for the payables, so it essentially turns agency bill into direct bill. Go to useascend.com/insurance guys. The link should be below on this YouTube video. Check them out. Thanks.
Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys Podcast, powered by Glovebox. God, I love Glovebox. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from, I almost said Hamilton, Alabama, Mobile, Alabama. Parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
I'm great, Scott. How are you today?
Best I have ever been, guys. I've got multitudes of stories to tell. I will save some of them for future podcasts. Bradley, I come down here last night, had a wonderful drive, left at 1:30 in the afternoon, got here about 6, and then all hell broke loose. The wife sends waits until I'm down here to send a 3-paragraph text message that in her mind, I believe, was with the best of intentions.
Mm-hmm.
That required a phone call to her, which then required about a 1.5-hour conversation and her hanging the phone up on me. Guys, let me give everybody on this podcast today that's listening today a piece of advice, okay? If your husband or wife is traveling for business, got something big going on the next day, maybe a big meeting, maybe 10 different podcasts that they're doing the next day or two, leave off the starting the scrimmage after they get to where they're going and wait until they get back home. And I'm going to give you an example. For any of you out there that are listening to this, that are going to be playing in the Super Bowl next Sunday, February the 12th, turn your phone.
Or last Sunday, depending on when you're listening to this.
Depending on when you're listening to this. Turn your phone off around 9 o'clock because I guarantee you somebody's wife or girlfriend, that's 55 players on the roster for both teams. That's 110 men. I will guarantee you at least one wife or girlfriend about 9 o'clock the night before the Super Bowl. Biggest game of their life, something they've worked for their entire life since they were 4 years old. We'll text something like, hey, maybe next time before you leave for the Super Bowl, you could do such and such and quit being so selfish.
Yeah.
Which then causes about a 4-hour fight, and the poor bastard gets 3 hours of sleep before he has to play in the Super Bowl the next day.
I think I saw, and it probably varies team to team, but I think they make them turn their phones in.
Oh, after last night, I would 1,000% do that.
The bad thing about this is, Kim's going to listen to this in like 3 weeks, and
Great.
It's going to all come.
I'm sure it'll all come back. I'm a glutton for punishment. Guys, we have got a fantastic episode for you today. Bradley, our podcast today, going to be a little edgy. Today. We are fortunate, guys. We've got a second-time guest on the show today, and we have a lot to discuss. This is a man that we have been dying to talk to for quite some time now, and when we get into this, you are going to understand why. And I want to give him the introduction that he's always deserved, and he especially, in my opinion, deserves right now. And again, you'll find out in just a second why. He is originally from Rochester, New York, and he currently resides in Columbus, Ohio. He is married to the beautiful Sharon, and they are currently, and I am envious of this, enjoying their time chilling out at their cottage on Buckeye Lake pretty much year round. I'm trying to get there myself. Joe, I'm trying to get there myself.
You're welcome there.
Exactly. He has 2 adult children, Vicky and Joe Petrelli Jr., and I know they are very proud of you, as they should be, and 2 adult grandchildren, JJ and Marissa. He is a graduate of the Ohio State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Actuarial Science. And he is the founder and I believe CEO of Demotech, which was founded in 1985 as a consulting actuary. They have performed 1,600 statements of actuarial opinion regarding loss and loss adjustment expense reserves, and 1,595 of the opinions resulted in adequate or favorable loss and LAE development. Guys, here comes the big one. Drum roll, please. On July 11th, 2022, Demotech was registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission as the 10th nationally recognized statistical rating organization in the U.S. Their classification is insurance companies. They have joined AM Best, Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and 5 others that are reviewed by the Office of Credit Ratings. You cannot imagine how big that is. Today, Demotech reviews and rates more than 460 risk-bearing entities in the United States of America, and they are uniquely rated, our uniquely rated count is appreciably greater than all insurer rating agencies other than AM Best. That's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce to you second-time guest on the IGP, and I can promise you it will not be his last. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and welcome Mr. Joseph Petrelli. How are you, Joseph?
Doing great. Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Joseph, we have got so much to talk about today. I guess what I want to do, the last time you came on this podcast, Bradley, help me out here, I believe was about 1.5 years ago.
I think
Is that
so.
about right?
Yeah, that's about right.
Since that,
Which seems like it's been 2 weeks.
Exactly. Seems like it was last Thursday.
Yeah.
Since that time, so much has happened, and I want to kind of go through all of what's happened. But where your name has been brought up both on the national news media circuit and just been a lot of backlash and things that have occurred, I would like for you to kind of talk to our audience for just a moment about the time frame in the past year what transpired. Of course, when it happened, Bradley and I immediately reached out to you to bring you on the show. And it's just been until today that we could get together. But explain to our audience what has transpired and kind of bring them up to today.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. Although for full disclosure, I have to say I also have two younger grandchildren, Luca and Ellis.
Oh,
so we got total of 4. So I want to get their names out there too. So
Luca, hey, Luca and Ellis, shout out to you guys. My
There you go.
apologies. I'm sitting here reading this and I'm looking at all of these names on here and I'm like,
No
as you
worries.
just said that, I was like, I forgot. How old are Luca and Ellis?
Luca is 11 and Ellis is 8.
Well, let me tell you something about Luca and Ellis. They are not going to care anything about listening to this podcast today, Joe. But here's the beautiful thing. This podcast is going to live in perpetuity on the World Wide Web.
There you go.
And one day, Luca, you and Ellis are going to probably get up into like your 20s, mid-20s, and you're going to be asking questions about your grandfather, and hopefully he'll still be alive at that time. But you are going to listen to this podcast, guys, and you are going to be so proud of him and what he's accomplished in his life. And you should be very proud of what he's accomplished. He's a big deal. So with that being said, let's go back in time. We left this podcast together. We got each other's cell phone numbers. And then it seemed like in the not too distant future, all hell broke loose. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, let me give you a little bit of history. I think we're talking about, certainly talking about what transpired in Florida. And let me say this, and this is just to give you and your reader or your listeners some sense of it. I was fortunate to be on the podcast a while back, and I don't care when you count the other podcast or you count the few minutes we've had on this one. I have talked to Scott. I've talked to you and Bradley more today than I have with the state of Florida from July in 1996 to date.
Oh my God.
Okay, so there's no verbal communication whatsoever, very little, next to nothing in writing, but literally I've talked to you more today than I have to them in 27 years. And so now with that as background, let's go back to March of 2022. The state of Florida legislature adjourned on March 13th of 2022, and they did not have any legislative reforms related to property insurance. And one of the reasons they needed that is if there was a letter from Commissioner David Altmaier to Senator Blaise Ingoglia that was dated April of 2021. And in that communication, Commissioner Altmaier indicated that Florida had about 8% of the residential property insurance claims in the country, but yet that 8% of claims represented nearly 80% of all residential property litigation. So you got 8% of the claims representing 80% of the litigation, and that letter was out there in 2021. The Department of Insurance, Commissioner of Insurance, the Office of Insurance Regulation has done additional research. And so on March 13th of 2022, when the legislature adjourned without addressing property insurance legislative reforms, Demotech was actually the first to issue a letter to the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the President of the Senate. And the reason we wrote to them is we thought that they were the people who were capable of convening a special session of the legislature. Masha Sadie, who's a TV reporter in Tampa, award-winning, she got hold of our letter. She got hold of some of the other things that were happening. Senator Jeff Brandes tried to use a statutory requirement to get the legislature to reconvene. That didn't work. And so, anyway, we became sort of the poster child, if you will, for the special session in May. They had a special session in May. The Speaker of the House at that time was unwilling to cooperate with the governor. The governor had some very serious reforms he wanted. And politically, I'm naive. I did not realize that, the Speaker of the House could stop things the way he did at that point in time. The governor had a good victory, all things considered, with the May 2022 session. Unfortunately, the situation was such that even the governor knew that, once he was reelected, he reconvened, and they had a December session as well. We do our normal review process. So that's kind of the political landscape as I saw it. We do our political process, our review process, non-political. Same procedures we've used for the last, since 1989 outside of Florida, and from 1996 forward in Florida. We have 6 or 8 major reviews a year, quarterly financial statements, proposed and final reinsurance program, other communications. We handle them all the same way. We always have. And if you think of that in terms of Florida, we started in 1996. We never heard a word from anyone, whether at the state or any place else, about what we did, how we did it, why we did it. And
hey, Joe, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Please.
So we started in 1996, and I believe if I'm not mistaken, the special session, I believe you said, convened in May of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it at that time, after you sent the letter to the different people that you felt like could help this situation? Was it after the May of 2022 special session, that they cranked up the war machine and their marketing department, their marketing and their, all of these people, the Donald Trumps, the DeSantis, they have war machines. And when I say war machines, I mean, they have people who their only job is to send out news articles and things for or against certain people or organizations. Was it at that time that you got bombarded with what happened relative to the negative publicity related to Demotech, or are we coming up on that here in just a minute?
Well, I think the May session, we were the first to publicly call for it. They
Right.
had a decent session in May, and subsequent to the May session, I think that if we Demotech and we were reporting what the same that the industry was reporting, that it was a nice first step forward, but the May session by itself was not going to resolve the issues related to the disparate litigation levels. That being said, I think it put us on the radar screen. And I think, again, because we haven't had communication with the state of Florida at any meaningful level, they might have thought that we weren't supporting what they did. We do support what they did in May and again in December. So there was some miscommunication. And I think we were the subject of several letters that were written. I think the FAIA also came out against us, wasn't just the state of Florida. And so, we were scrutinized, attacked, whatever word you want to use. But that was part of it.
So in that, take us through kind of late July 2022, kind of take us through what happened.
But let me say this before you answer that, Joe. To all of our listening audience out there, there is one thing I can promise you. You do not want to get on the wrong side of a large PR firm that has been funded with millions and millions, millions and millions of dollars to discredit you in a way It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. They're gonna, they're gonna find some way to try to discredit what you're doing. These political organizations and certain politicians that do have power have the ability to pick up the phone, make one phone call, and the next thing you know, across the U.S., there are letters, there are news articles coming out about certain things. Go ahead, Joe. I didn't mean to get off on a tangent there.
No, well, I think, from our perspective, and certainly there was miscommunication, or maybe even not even miscommunication, but a lack of communication. Because we do support everything that happened in Florida, certainly needed tort reform. So in July of last year, again, we received a letter from the Commissioner of Insurance indicating that it was his belief that we'd done some things that we hadn't done in the past. And we received a letter from the CFO wrote to, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Finance Administration saying, who are these guys and why are they doing what they're doing? And I think from our perspective, again, we take a longer view. We're going back to 1996 when the state of Florida invited us to help them through the review the process of rating the takeout companies. And as I say, the legacy rating agencies stepped away and we stepped up. And so I look at it from 1996 to date. I'm looking at a much longer time period. And so when we were scrutinized or attacked in July of last year, it was interesting to me, and I put that interesting in air quotes because if anybody would have picked up the phone and spoken to us, we would have told them we genuinely supported everything that happened in the May special session. We followed the same procedure in July. There was some concern with the state of Florida that we were going to downgrade. I think one of their letters said 17 insurance companies.
Correct.
The irony is the letters, I believe, were dated July 19th, and we received those letters around 4 or 5 o'clock that afternoon. By the time we had those letters, we had already contacted and spoken with and had meetings with 11 companies. And as a matter of fact, one of the companies actually told us, because we called them, we said, these numbers can't be right. And they said, gee, you're right. Those numbers are wrong. So we had 11 conversations already, and the number of companies is immaterial. The point is we'd spoken to 11 of them by the time we got that letter that, kind of was coming after us. And so if somebody would have called us, we would have told them, this is our process. We've used it for the last, 25 years and in Florida, and we've used it 30 plus years countrywide. So we were working our process consistently, and there was a lack of communication totally. That being said, we wound up consuming a fair amount of time and effort responding to those letters. And it is what it is. I think from our perspective, we like to think it's over. State of Florida is going to have a better opportunity for profitability moving forward than it would have had without the May and December 2022 special sessions.
So what you're saying is we've been on this call for 28 minutes. You've spoken with us more today than you have with anyone at a high level in the state of Florida in the last 20 years?
20 plus years, and I would say more today with anyone at the state of Florida. I mean, I would, yes, no doubt. I mean, and any that 28 minutes is markedly more than everyone we've spoken to.
So what, not to mention, I was going back and forth with you on LinkedIn the day that all that happened too. So what you're saying is all of these politicians trying to fix this problem publicly and go after Demotech was just a bunch of grandstanding. There was actually no work behind the scenes that was going on. A reasonable person would pick up the phone and call the CEO of Demotech and be like, hey, what the hell is going on here?
Correct.
But I want to be, it's usually not my style to waffle, but I want to be careful. We think this is over.
Yeah.
We think it's behind us. We hope there could be communication in the future. I'm
For
not
sure.
looking to open up any old wounds on people that have markedly more personnel and financial capabilities than we do. But yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of communication would have gone a long distance, but at the same time, I like to think this is behind us.
Yeah, for
Hey,
sure.
Joe, I've got a question for you. So did they not hold, was it a regular session or a special session they had back in the October, November timeframe where the state of Florida did some work towards all of the stuff that's been going on relative to litigation down there and trying to curb some of that? Am I right about that?
They had a
Freddie?
reform session
A reform
there-
session
2 months ago,
Yeah.
which is
There
what should
was-
have
yeah.
happened to begin with.
Yeah,
Joe,
there's
do you
one-
feel like
there
you
was-
had any? Do you feel like you had any? Maybe some of the things that happened, and again, we're not going to open up old wounds here, but do you feel a sense of pride in that? Maybe some of that kind of was the onus behind what then happened a little bit relative to that.
Well, I would say that the May special session we might have been a contributor to that. I think the December one, I think was certainly 100% the governor's idea. But I think there were some improvements in May that went into effect July 1 of last year, which in retrospect, when you look at, Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Nicole, you got 700,000 claims that occurred between July 1, when the May special session went into effect, and the next special session. So I think to the extent that there was something in July 1 that favorably impacted what could have been with the 700,000 plus claims from Nicole and Ian. So yeah, maybe we did a little something there, but at the same time, we paid dearly for it in terms of what happened to us. So
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody's ahead but the state of Florida, which is good.
And I think what happened too in July is you had all this public grandstanding of villainizing Demotech, even though there's no conversations behind the scenes going on, when the real problem is what was addressed in the special session a few months later with the property insurance reform.
Correct.
That's really what needed to happen.
Correct.
Not, we need to keep Demotech from doing their job. And I did a reaction video, Joe, when the property insurance reform stuff came out a couple months ago, and kind of went through it and gave my analysis of each thing. My big concern, I would love to get your thoughts on this. I think everything I saw was mostly good. I mean, I think eliminating the assignment of benefits, that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest, if not the biggest problem in the state of Florida. And we've seen some of that bleed over here to Alabama.
Right.
I think eliminating that, I think, getting the attorneys don't do anything but mess things up in an insurance claim. There are certainly situations where it is warranted to hire an attorney. And I've even had clients of mine, I recommend, hey, I think you should get an attorney.
I had to hire attorneys all the time.
But at scale, it was good you come from a family of attorneys.
Correct.
At scale, the attorneys are going to mess things up.
Right. Oh,
Right.
They'll screw something up.
I had a young lady in my office who was trying to buy insurance from us a couple weeks ago that could not buy insurance from us because she had an open claim. And it was a minor claim.
Mm-hmm.
It was something super minor. The only reason she could not, the only reason the claim was still open was because she had hired an attorney to help with the claim. And it was such a small claim, the attorney was over fighting to try and get more money out of it.
Sure.
When the insurance company's like, hey, we'll fix your roof.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, and I told her, I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, you shouldn't have hired this attorney like that. There wasn't enough money. There wasn't enough blood to squeeze out of the turnip. But anyway, so my big concern with the property insurance reform in Florida is, can the politicians, who are all mostly attorneys, by the way, the politicians and the citizens be patient enough to see the effects of that?
Mm-hmm.
You make a change in insurance, like it's
Moving the
3, 4,
Titanic.
5, 6, 8 years before you actually see the positive effects.
Right.
Can we be patient enough for that to happen? That's my overall concern. I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I'm an actuary by background. I've been in the insurance industry forever. And your point is extremely well taken about how long it takes. I always tell people when a good example of how long things takes and how difficult it is if you're trying to swing a piece of plywood underwater, right? I mean, it takes a while, you know, and I think when you look at the way the law is going into effect, it goes. Let's call the multiplicative impact of the May reforms and the December reforms. Those are all in effect cumulatively January 1 of this year, but you still got 700,000 claims that occurred prior to the most recent one. So there's a mixture that's out there. You got claims in place from before the May reforms. You got claims in place after the May reforms. You got claims in place subsequent to the December reform. So all those, you got separate pigs going through the same python. And yeah, and I think it's going to take a while to shake all that out. And then you look at the staffing issues. I mean, the commissioner is Altmaier's no longer commissioner. There's other key people at
Citizens
the OIR.
has a new CEO, right?
Yeah, Citizens has a new CEO. There's just a lot of things going on. And, you know, I don't know that people make a difference on laws that are in place, but you know, there's just a lot of different moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hey,
Joe, it's going to take a little bit. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
So to add to Bradley's question, I don't know that the people of Florida, meaning the citizens of the state of Florida, have much choice. They're kind of at the mercy of both the politicians, the carrier, you know, all of
Citizens.
this. Right. But my question to you was going to be very similar to Bradley's. Do you believe, in your years of experience in the insurance business and based on the reforms that you probably have seen and know better than anybody, will these reforms bring back carriers and make it easier for reinsurers to enter the market back into Florida? Because, you know, that's been the big problem is carriers are like, we are not going in Florida because we are not going to be profitable.
And I think that was part of the reform was there was some sort of stipulation of people having to use private insurers too. There was something in there in that regard where if you had the option to use a private insurer over Citizens, you had to do that. And I think that's good. But that was the part that overly concerned me. Like, hey, look, your rates are going to go up before they go down. You've got to be patient enough to wait on them to go down.
Right.
I mean, I think from what I've been reading in the trade press, and you know that would include Artemis, that includes Inside P&C, Trading Risk, Insurance Insider, National Underwriter, and you know the Insurance Advocate. You just read the major publications, and the reinsurers right now for property catastrophe reinsurance, whether it's hurricane or whether it's flood or wildfire or earthquake, rates are firming. Some people are saying it's the rates are the highest in a couple generations. So I think the reinsurance costs on the regional carriers in Florida are going to be a significant issue. But I will say this about homeowners insurance, and I'm not talking about Florida anymore. I'm talking about homeowners insurance countrywide. And this is my own personal opinion. But when you think about it, what's going to go down? Is the price of roofing shingles going down?
Right.
Is the price of windows going down?
Hey, I'm building a house right now, so you're hitting me right in the gut with all this.
Yeah, I mean, no, think about it though. I mean, is the price of carpet going down? The underlay under carpet, the cost of a sink, not to mention the hourly wages of the people that you want to be there, right. The cost of paint, nails. The benefits of the people who are coming out to visit you, the cost of the trucks, the cost of the tools. There's absolutely, I can't see anything associated with homeowners or property insurance in general that's headed down. And so I wonder why people promise rate decreases. I would promise a moderation of increases.
Stabilization. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
Yeah,
like,
it'll become an inflationary increase instead of 30, 40, 50%. But I mean, your own house, how much has the cost of that gone up since you began the conversation?
exactly. Well, and it's one of those things too. You know, we had a customer last week whose rate went up $150 and was upset about it. And I'm like, man, it stayed the same.
You
You
should be the happiest person in Mobile County right now.
You hit the nail on the head. It's not decreases. It's rate stabilization. Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
so
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But moving, kind of transitioning a little bit, Scott alluded to it in his. Let's move on to more positive things.
Sure.
Scott alluded to this in his intro. July 11th, Demotech was registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission as the 10th nationally recognized statistical rating organization in the U.S. Talk a little bit about
that's big news.
What that means, not only for you guys, what it means for insurance carriers, what it means for consumers too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think from our perspective, and again, we are the 10th nationally recognized statistical rating organization. Our classification is insurance companies, which is, where our expertise is. Of the 10 companies that are registered, there's 8 of the 10 are registered in the classification of insurance companies. And so you're looking at, certainly AM Best, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch, some others. What we are proudest of is we being Demotech in North America, in the United States, where we're active, we are number 2 in terms of the uniquely rated count of insurers. And that means we have more uniquely rated insurers than Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, and the other companies. And so for consumers and insurance agents, that means that Demotech rated companies are getting added to the competitive pool. Gives people more choices, give agents more markets. And we think that that's something that is very, very good for everybody, including us. We know that. But the other thing that's interesting too is that we are more inclined to look at smaller companies that have, use a lot of reinsurance. And so for our companies, we're watching the reinsurance markets and we're concerned about the cost of reinsurance for them and what that means to their programs. But at the same time, these are companies, many of the companies we work with have been around for over 100 years. So they've been through these sorts of cycles. So I think from our perspective, yes, the SEC registration, and we've got the Office of Credit Ratings looking at us, which is fine. They're looking at the other NRSROs as well. And I think what we're proudest of is that the same procedures and practices that the other much larger international NRSROs have, we have those in place at a level and that manifests itself so that we're compliant as well.
So what I'm hearing, and you and I have even been in a few discussions on LinkedIn where I've defended you guys. When we're very familiar with Demotech down here on the coast, right? And it's starting to bleed into other parts of the United States. And sometimes I'll see agents on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or wherever, and they're a little bit uneasy because they're so used to seeing AM Best. Everybody's conditioned to seeing AM Best. And so what I'm hearing is this gives agents all the more reason to be more comfortable with Demotech rated agencies because you yourself are now being rated kind of on the same scale as an AM Best would be. Is that fair to say?
Well, at the same scale that a nationally recognized statistical rating organization would be, and I think too. I mean, there's other ways too to look at this. Back in I think 2017, 2019, and I think again last year, 2022, the National Conference of Insurance Legislators, which is it's the state insurance committees and the state Senate committees in charge of insurance. They have this group that is national legislators. They've been around since, I think, 1969 as an organization. And 2017, 2019, 2022, they had a model act. And it was the National Conference of Insurance Legislatures Model Act on the regulation of insurance and competition amongst rating agencies. And in all three of their model acts, that they specifically said, number one, the states are in charge of insurance companies, nobody else. And they called for competition amongst rating agencies. And they said specifically in each of the three draft laws, model acts, they specifically mentioned Demotech as a competent rating agency. That was their term, not ours. So yeah, I'm hoping that agents will become more comfortable. I mean, my God, we've been doing this since 1989. I mean, there's agents out there. We've been doing this since before some of those agents were born.
And I say that to say, I don't think they should be uncomfortable at all, but I think so many people, especially in more inland parts of the country, your Kentuckys and Ohio's, they're just so used, conditioned to seeing other rating agencies. Yeah. So they're just not used to seeing it. Whereas down here in Florida and Alabama, like it's, everywhere. I have a two-part question, and this is something I've wanted to ask you since we talked last time. So I deal with a lot of these insurance companies, and everybody that listens to this knows that I'm a big proponent of insurance carriers making it easy on us to do business with them. I gave a keynote presentation last week. It was supposed to be in Austin, Texas. I missed my flight and had to do it virtually to an MGA that has some Demotech rated carriers, by the way. And the overarching, and this was to their corporate leadership and their technology department. And the overarching message, the core of my message to them was, every single thing you do it through the lens of A, what's best for the customer, and B, how do I make it easier for my agents to do business with us? Because if you make it easy on me to do business with you, I can then in turn make it easy on my clients to do business with me. Everybody happy, everybody wins, right? So I think that, we deal with a lot of these insurance companies, and they are just, the front end is great, and then the back end is held together with glue, thumbtacks, and paper clips. And the technology is horrible. It's legacy tech. Nothing talks to anything. We moved locations recently, Joe, or I say recently, two and a half years ago, we moved locations, and I updated all my address with all my carriers. I'm still getting letters at the old address because you update one thing on this side of the carrier and it doesn't make its way to the other side, right? The right hand doesn't talk to the left hand. I think that a huge part, or not a huge part, but a part of an insurance carrier's rating, I think the technology and the ease of that technology use should be factored into that. First part, what are your thoughts on that? And B, do you guys factor that into rating?
Well, I think should it be? I think the answer is right now implicitly, and by that I mean not directly. It's factored in the sense that most rating agencies will look at the expense ratio of the carrier that they're looking at, and theoretically the human costs, the commission costs, and the information technology costs are kind of baked in there. I would agree with you, and I'll get to the second part, how we factor it in, but the first part, I think you're right about the need for companies to get to prioritize that, because there's the problem you run into is they pay for technology, they carry it on their balance sheet at a depreciated amount, and it's tough to kind of write that off and buy another system. But the problem is, I mean, if you look at our cell phones today versus our cell phones 10 years ago, there's no comparison.
Right.
And I mean, our cell phone today is literally, it's 10 pieces of equipment. I mean, it's just, And if you look at the processing systems today, the technology, the hierarchy, the way they can almost think is so markedly superior to what there was in the past, especially when you look at integrated systems, where a company will have a claim system, a processing system, and a agent's commission system, contingent commissions. Now they're all one big system with subsets. Before you used to build them in, separately.
Right.
So no, you're right. They have to do that.
And my reasoning for that, you may say, well, Bradley, how does that affect the financial rating of a company? Well, I think it lends itself to balls getting dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a claim not being paid or something of that nature.
And vice versa, the more efficient a
Right.
company is, the better run it is. Obviously, the opportunity there to be more profitable. So therefore, you would think they would be higher rated.
The way that we select a carrier to put clients with is who's going to make it easiest.
Right.
Yeah.
They're getting the better business. all you carriers out there, listen to this. Like the carriers that make it easier on us to do business are getting the preferred business.
Right.
We get you'd be astounded at the number of communications. To your point, the number of communications we receive from consumers that basically say, I know you do a financial rating, but this is the way they've treated me.
Right.
How can you give them a good financial rating when this is the way I've been treated? How what's your thinking? And so we get involved in that, and we talk to consumers. I mean, we got an 800 number. We answer all our phone calls. We answer all our inquiries online. If a consumer contacts us, we're going to give them our best possible answer. And sometimes we tell them if that's actually the service you've received, here's the company's phone number. Here's the Department of Insurance's phone number. It sounds to us like if that's a literal discussion of the way you've been treated, it doesn't sound right to us either. So the consumer experience, I think, is what every processing system has to be about. And I'll also say this: when you think about the insurance business, I'm not sure policyholders are really your customer. At the end of the day, claimants might be your only customer. Policyholders are sort of like, they're kind of in the parking garage.
Right.
Right. The ones that you really have to take care of are your claimants. And ironically, we look at claimants as people we should cancel. Right. So it's like,
yeah.
Are we looking at this backwards? Where
that is a phenomenal perspective.
Joe, you were preaching to the choir. I think ever since this podcast started, I've always said what will always keep the independent insurance agent with a job is going to be that we don't earn our money just taking someone's premium. When we earn our money is when the worst possible thing happens to somebody. And also, as a subset to that, that is one of about 4 times people actually think about insurance.
Right.
They won't think about insurance for 8, 9, 10 months until A, they get their renewal and it goes up a lot, or B, their house burns down or their kid gets hit in a hit and run, on a I-65 and they're in the hospital. Then that's all they think about is insurance. I have never agreed with someone more than what you just said. I think we need to flip this thing on its head almost and think about it in terms of not policy holders, but claimants.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only reason any of us have a job.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'll say this too. I worked for a small insurance company in upstate New York for about 5 years. And in that 5-year period, believe it or not, this company went through pretty much every distribution system on the face of the earth. They were direct writers. And again, this was before there was the internet, but they were direct writers. They were in MGAs. They were independent agents is where they started. Then they went direct writer, then they went MGA, and then they had some hybrid system, and then they went back to independent agent. And the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, there were people inside the company, myself included, who said, why are we switching from the independent agency system it's actually the one that's the most responsive to the consumer. And the company was looking for ways to make its life easier. And it wasn't looking to address what the consumer was doing. But I mean, I think this idea about claimants are your real customer, that really just hit me. I'm embarrassed to say I've been in the insurance business like over 50 years, but it just hit me the last few years is we need to be able to discern between the person who was sitting at a stop sign and got T-boned from the person who was drunk and T-boned them. I mean,
Correct.
and those are two different situations and two different types of claimants. And the guy that was sitting there and got T-boned, or the woman who was sitting there and got T-boned, that's a customer we should embrace because that's why they paid us. They didn't do anything wrong. They were stopping at a stop sign, and you know, I mean, and they got hurt.
Joe, this is a true story. I probably pick up no less than 10 policy holders, each one with home, 2 or 3 automobiles, umbrella, blah, 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 a year from friends of mine. This is a true story. From friends of mine who call me and they say, Scott, I'm embarrassed to call you, but I bought my insurance direct from XYZ company. My wife wrecked her BMW 3 months ago, 2 months ago, a month ago, and I'm dealing with somebody in a call center that every time I call over there, I talk to a different person because these direct to consumer places, you know, a lot of times you don't have, you just have like a claims customer service number. So every single time you call, you know, they have notes in the system. That's true. But you're not dealing with the same person, and they are just ready to throw their hands up and they just need help. So what I always do, and this is kind of a, I guess, a life hack for any of you insurance agents that are listening to this right now, I get them on the phone with me on my smartphone on a 3-way call with the carrier, and it's usually a captive. It's usually an Allstate or State Farm or Farmers, and we call the claims center together. Could be auto, could be home, and I'm on the call. He tells the person, or she tells the person, that it's okay to talk to me. And I kind of walk down that road with them. And every single time I do that, when we hang up the phone, they always say the exact same thing. Scott, I really appreciate what you did for me today. My insurance is set to renew in July, and call me in June. I want to switch all my stuff over to you. Every single time. Probably happens 5 to 10 times a year that situation happens in my agency. And I've taken like an hour out of my time to stop what I'm doing. They don't have their insurance with me, but I get on that call with them with a customer service claims representative. And then now myself and that person are kind of walking down this road, and my friend is over here just listening to all of this. He's listening to what's going on. And it gives me a lot of altitude by the time we get off the phone. So,
well, you're doing it right. I mean, I'll give you for instance, and this goes back to Hurricane Katrina down in Louisiana way back, and that was what, 05 maybe?
05, yeah.
Well, we had a friend down there. He was in the title insurance business. So he was in the insurance business, but he was in the title insurance side. He had his cars. He had his office. He had a house that he lived in. He had a house he was building. And Katrina struck. And every one of those situations, the autos, the business, the house that was under construction, the house that he lived in, the business autos, every time, and they're all at the same company. And he called me and he said to me, Joe, he says, every time I call this company, one's about the auto, one's about the house that's under construction, one's the house that we lived in. He said, every time I call him, I got to tell the whole story again.
Exactly.
Don't they talk to each other? He says, this is like the most painful. Katrina was disastrous because, well, you guys are in the South, but I mean, the truth of the matter is your entire family is displaced. You got no place to go. It was traumatic on top of being, an economic event. And this poor guy was beside himself. He says, do I have to tell this story every time I call the company?
Right.
And I told him, I said, I apologize for them, but I guess that's the way they're structured. And so anyway, it was just one of those things where here's a chance where he had everything with one company thinking that it was going to help him.
Yeah.
And it wound up hurting him when he had a claim because it was tragic.
Right.
Well, I tell my team all the time, proper communication and setting expectations, not just in insurance, in all business, solves 98% of the problems you come into contact with.
Correct.
Yeah.
Proper communication, setting expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay if you can't solve the person's problem right away, as long as we communicate that and the expectations are met.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Joe, I've got one last question for you, and then Bradley and I've got to run.
Okay.
So we had the hiccup or the situation that occurred in the July timeframe. You had already been on the phone and been communicating with some of the 17 companies that were looking at downgrading, and we were looking at numbers and readjusting things there. So fast forward to Hurricane Ian. I believe that was a September event in Florida, down around Fort Myers, and I, by all estimations, will be the most catastrophic hurricane to ever hit the United States of America, at somewhere between 75 and $100 billion paid out. I guess I'm just talking because I'm channeling this question through all the insurance agents, independent agents listening to this right now. And my question was going to be, has there been enough data come in yet to determine whether any of those carriers are looking at potentially closing the doors, or any other carriers that have had to pull out of the state of Florida or become insolvent due to that particular hurricane? Or is there just not enough data yet out there to know whether that's the case or not?
Good question.
Well, first, I just in terms of the number 17 to be associated with the companies we were looking at, it's constantly fluid. So I'm just going to quibble with you and say, let's just forget the number 17.
Sure. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No need to apologize. That number's been out there. But in terms of Hurricane Ian, the companies that we review and rate in Florida, we make them purchase an entire program for the season. It's a horizontal program. There's a first event, a second event. It's a multiple event program. It's not just a big one and done. But that being said, we have about 50% of the residential property insurance marketplace in Florida. So when you look at that $100 billion that's associated with the top end of what Ian might be, that includes commercial, that includes pretty much everything. But on the residential side, whatever that number is, Demotech rated companies purchased well in excess of $35 billion. So on the residential property side, our guys got enough. That being said, what's killed companies in Florida have been litigation levels that are just off the charts. I'll give you, for instance, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. They have a 12 billion with a B homeowners market, 12 billion homeowners insurance market. In 2021, there were companies in Florida that went under that had a tiny slice of Florida's homeowners insurance marketplace, but yet that one tiny little company had more new litigation than the entire state of California's homeowners market. Think about that. One tiny little company with more new claims than the entire state of California in terms of litigation. So yeah, they were litigated to death. And we'll have some more to say about that down the line. You might even want to get me back here towards the end of the year because we'll have
Let's
more to
do
say
it.
about that litigation level. But it literally was like the litigators just put their foot on the accelerator and went after a few companies in Florida and just buried them with litigation levels that were unlike anything those companies had seen in recent years.
Well, it's like I had these attorneys on Twitter that argue with me to try and say that the attorneys were not the problem in Florida, that the insurance companies are. And I'm like, okay, if we look at the average claim size in Florida is just a little bit higher, just a little bit as far as the damage itself than the rest of the country. But yet Florida makes up whatever percentage of all of the claims in the United States, not to mention the litigation. Like there's no way. I had a guy say, well, you don't see the data how I see it. I'm like, brother, data is data. Like I'm reading this verbatim. There's no way an unbiased third party looks at this and doesn't say that the litigation and the attorneys just basically having their way with the insurance companies are not to blame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say on LinkedIn, I learned a lesson last year. It's to your point, to your point, Bradley. I was on LinkedIn and there was a law firm in Florida with a case that was like, it was literally over 1 cent. And they were bragging about how they had won this case after 3.5, 4 years. And I said, he posted, and I sent to that person, I said, how can you say with all the money you spent and the company spent that winning after 4 years, a case over 1 cent is a win? And his response was, because if the bad guys would have prevailed, that 1 cent to the consumer would have meant tens of thousands of dollars to the attorneys. And I'm like, that was kind of an aha moment, because that's crazy. The consumer gets a penny and the lawyers get tens of thousands. So anyway, yeah, no,
the consumer does not win in that scenario.
No,
like
not
certainly there are situations where you need to hire an attorney. Like there's situations where somebody in an insurance company drops the ball or something's not being paid exactly correctly, or in the case, we have a few clients that, and Scott does as well, that may own several hundred rental houses. Well, sometimes they want to outsource that way they don't have to handle it if there's like a catastrophic event. It's still early in the morning, guys. There's situations, but these attorneys getting on Facebook or getting on TV saying we hate insurance companies is the biggest farce in marketing to ever exist. Because like we've said on a previous podcast, Joe, if you've ever dealt with one of these attorneys on the insurance company side, they freaking love you. They butter you up. It's like you're their best friend,
Well, there's obviously a reason why an attorney would spend millions of dollars. You do realize between attorneys, pharmaceutical companies, and insurance carriers, if it was not for those three entities running commercials, I don't know that there would be television anymore. I'm not even kidding. You can turn on any program that you want to turn on a television, on a direct TV or Dish Network, and about 8 out of 10 commercials will be one of those three commercials.
So one time, I'm going to tell this story real quick and I'll let you close. Joe will appreciate this, as will the listeners. One time, Scott and I did a speaking engagement to a group of carriers.
Oh, wow.
You remember this?
No.
And it was carrier reps, marketing people, that sort of thing. And Scott goes on this tangent and hones in on Liberty Mutual.
Well, somebody said something about commercials or something.
Yeah. And he said, what is this?
We've reached our lowest common denominator, I think is
the
what
Liberty
I said.
Mutual emu.
I'm like, what the hell is an emu?
And goes in on it, right? And I'm not razzing you because I think it's hilarious. And then the dude running the conference comes up and he looked like he was white as a sheet. And he says, and we would really like to thank our sponsor this session, Liberty Mutual. And so I find out I find out
That is
I don't-
that is a true story, guys.
I
That
don't-
really happened.
I don't know that you know this part of the story.
No.
So 2 years later, I get appointed with Liberty Mutual, right? Big fan of Liberty. Medium fan of Liberty. I get appointed with Liberty Mutual, and the marketing rep for my agency was also the marketing rep that was there that day.
Oh no.
And they were getting their booth ready when that happened, and they had just laid out a bunch of emu themed sunglasses. And when you said that, she said, we put them all back up. It's just like,
Well, the lady said something about, we were talking about marketing and insurance carriers and commercials and how
And it wasn't-
we had just reached our
you didn't
lowest
have a
common
problem.
denominator.
You didn't. I'm defending you. You didn't have a it was just like that. It was like funny conjecture. You know, it was like, you know,
I don't mind insurance carriers running commercials. I think they should, but you know, we've reached this thing where Geico will run commercials that look like the Old Spice guy that's on a horse and he's like, you know, it's just a guy running a chainsaw in his living room, and it's like, call Geico, save 15%. It's how many seconds can we keep somebody's eyeballs on this television?
It's clickbait. It's the same reason why.
That's all it is.
It's the same reason why local news stations share
the worst possible news,
and it's national news. And I'm like, why are you a local news station sharing an article about someone being murdered in a horrible way in Cincinnati, Ohio? Oh, because you're trying to get the clicks.
Correct.
Like, report the local news. Don't report things to get clicks. That's part of the. We're going to go down a rabbit hole. But anyway,
Joe, thank you so much for being here today. We love you very much.
Big fans.
Well,
Big fans.
We appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to the third time.
Absolutely. Later this year.
I can't wait. We're going to find out who made it. It's going to be like Naked and Afraid. We're going to find out who made it and who didn't make it. Guys, you are listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. And as I end every episode, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today and go out into the big bad world. Create relationships, build relationships with your people and your clients, and go make money for the people that you love in your life. Figure out what your why is and go out there and do it. Make money for your wife, for your husband, for your kids' college fund, for your parents and your in-laws that are struggling out there today. Go help them make money and write good business for the companies that you represent, and write good business for the agencies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, Joe.
Joe, we love you too.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. We did too. Guys, you were listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family, and we'll see you back here real soon. Take care.